After playing Forza Motorsport on the original Xbox, I liked it a lot. I liked the cars that appeared before Gran Turismo. I liked the customization options which let you do almost anything. I like that you can just buy a car and go racing instantly, and I like that it's backwards compatible with the Xbox 360 for convenience sake. And after releasing the review, I got plenty of comments from you guys saying that the rest of the series was even better, which means I'm only scraping the surface. The developers thought so too back in the mid-2000s, who were aiming for bigger things with the next generation console. They simply wanted more Forza Motorsport, with a higher frame rate, more cars, customization options, a photo mode, and online auction. It's obvious that online interactivity was a priority for the developers Turn 10 Studios. Forza Motorsport 2 was released for the Xbox 360 on May 2007. Like most Xbox titles including the first Forza, I never gave this one a proper go because I grew up with PlayStation consoles, and anyone I knew who was heavily into cars either weren't as interested in gaming as I was, or didn't own an Xbox 360. But now that's about to change. Think of Forza Motorsport 2 as the predecessor, but improved. That's a giant understatement, but it is. Like the first Forza, the first thing you do is select your region, first car with set number of credits, and go motor racing. As you win events, you earn prize money, cars, discounts, and eventually grow from the test track to the biggest speed freak in the world, averaging nearly 300 kilometers in the process, just like any typical sim racer. Once again, the developers resisted license tests because they thought that people who play these games would very likely know how to drive a car properly, and they wanted you to learn about the cars, exploring them, and that adjusting the driving aid settings, which I'll get to, is a better way to improve your racing skills. However, for the first half an hour, it does kind of feel like a license test. Okay, I don't like that most events take place at the test track at first. I get that you're a rookie driver, you're racing in a closed environment, and the track designs aren't too bad. It's a huge area that has multiple variations, but seeing the same area for long periods of time doesn't set a good first impression, and it makes the game feel tedious. However, if you persevere for at least half an hour, it's all good, and the other tracks are great to race on. Again, only a minor nitpick, and it takes up 5% of the career mode at most. I shouldn't complain because anything's better than license tests in Gran Turismo. I won't let that go. There are also more events and are never two of the same, therefore you're driving more different cars at a higher rate without reducing gameplay time. Awesome. Other things to do outside of career mode include free run, single race, multiplayer both split screen and online, but no drivatar. Fine, because even in the endurance events, I wouldn't have bothered with it this time. You get more out of winning the races yourself. It's not like these events are Gran Turismo 4 long. The exhibition arcade side of Forza 2 is almost structured like a racing arcade machine, in which you win a race, you unlock the next circuit, and a set of fast cars, only you get infinite continues. It also has a completion percentage even for the time trial, the latter involving beating the target time with the car the game chooses, which indicates that it's another part of completing Forza Motorsport 2 as a whole, on top of being a more casual way to play this game. The graphics look kind of cel shaded. It could be because of the upscaled 1080p resolution. But to go from 25 frames per second, stupid PAL region, to 60 was a breath of fresh air, even for a console game that came out over a decade ago. I mean, personally, I don't really care about frame rates and resolutions as long as the games are good, a priority that isn't first in most gamers and developers these days. But graphically it looks like an upscale of the first Forza, with more detailed reflection effects and damage model, which I'll get to, and whenever you slow down, the brakes glow, which is a neat touch, and yet the whole presentation is almost identical to the first game. It's like when the Gran Turismo series went from the first PlayStation to the second one with these two. They felt the same, but graphically it's a different story. Sebring, Mugello, and Suzuka circuits are introduced to the series, while Laguna Seca, Tsukuba, Road Atlantis, Silverstone, and a few fictional ones, Maple Valley, Sunset Peninsula, and New York, return. There are, however, a lot of omissions, including Blue Mountain. I'm actually kind of glad this one's gone because I can never master it. Road America, Rio de Janeiro, Tokyo Circuit, and absolutely no point-to-point circuits, which means there's a lower volume of fictional areas. Obviously, there are plenty of variations, which lead to a combined total of 32 tracks, with some of the fictional ones drivable in reverse, and you can only have so many areas, although the F1 games might have something to say about that, but this can fall in danger of becoming repetitive, especially worrying if the first category of events are set in one area. I mean, that's a large number of omissions. Dan wanted to keep the RPG feel from the predecessors, like leveling up. You gained something, you rewarded something. That's also part of keeping you hooked to these games. Earnings are once again piled based on position, difficulty settings, car rarity, and damage. The more total the car is, the less you earn. And less difficulty options, including driving aids and hardened opponent AI, earn you more. Earnings increase your career level, which is similar to the first Forza, but instead of brand discounts when you level up, you get manufacturer ones, and cars have their own individual leveling system as well. The more you win, the more discounts you unlock for that car, meaning you could be potentially paying only half the price for things you need. I find this particularly useful because I selected Europe class this time, and the prices for these cars, well, it keeps the game more exciting than it should be. The car total has gone up from 230 to 310. More cars equal more diversity in the races, event types, and a couple of manufacturers make their introduction, including Lamborghini and BMW. I know there was a Beamer race car in the first Forza, but I'm talking about multiple ones. According to Dan, BMW are very reserved when it comes to licensing their cars in video games, and he had a hard time trying to convince them of the benefits. They're here, so must have done a good job of it. Although I do find it hard to believe if the Gran Turismo and Need for Speed titles had Beamers as well, but Dan was there negotiating, so what do I know? Throughout 2007, vehicle and circuit packs were released on a monthly basis, which brought the total car count close to 400 and the track count to 34. I don't know if you had to pay for them or if they were free updates like the Gran Turismo games after 5. It's hard to tell because everything is no longer available to download anymore. So if you want the extra content, you'll need to find the limited edition instead. It doesn't matter to me because most of it would reappear in Forza Motorsport 3 anyway. All the cars are redesigned, not like Gran Turismo 5 and 6 where they imported all their car models from the predecessors, including the PSP spin-offs. And only around a quarter are premium. In Forza Motorsport 2, everything is, just without the interior view. It was one of the big objectives for Turn 10, but it would have reduced the number of total cars. There's only one disc, and they did eventually implement it in the third Forza Motorsport, so it's all good. And I appreciate their quality over quantity approach. After level 19, I realized this channel was called Color Shed. What am I doing? My car should be as vibrant as possible. Make this Holden Monaro and BMW M3 as part of the channel's motorsport division. And have you ever seen a pink Lancia Stratos or purple Nissan R390 before? Cars can be upgraded, customized, and resprayed like the predecessor, but here there's a lot more at your disposal. I was determined to make the cars look serious. In hindsight, I think I did a decent job in the predecessor, despite the lack of experience. Like I've always wanted an orange Ford GT, like the special X1 model. Here, it's the same story. They look cool, but I wanted them to look really professional and juvenile at the same time, like a race car that belongs in a GTA game. You get up to 4,000 layers, so if you ever reach the limit, you might want to consider a career in vehicle graphics. Just remember to get the car you want ASAP to increase its individual level and unlock more discounts. If you want, you can put your customized masterpieces up for auction for other players to bid on, which is a series introduction that would be used up to Forza Motorsport 4, but would be reintroduced in Forza Horizon 3. I think it's a great feature, because if you design something that you put serious work into, there's a chance you can be rewarded for it. And you can take a photo in showrooms and replays, and for a while had the ability to upload onto the Forza website to show off. Unfortunately, while the website is still technically active, the earliest game mentioned on the site is Forza Motorsport 4. Oh well, I have a better alternative. My own YouTube channel with an audience in the tens of thousands to show my creations to. What do you guys think? Normally in a simulation racing sequel, there would be next to nothing to say, or at least I'd struggle because unless you're a pro race driver, it's hard to truly know the differences in the mechanics. Of course, it plays as you'd expect from a sim racer in the mid to late 2000s. Braking before the corners, the AI recognize you, running into a barrier brings you to a complete stop, too much power slides you out, it's a sim racer. You can even slide out from getting your wheels caught in the apex. The developers wanted to make sure you were punished for reckless driving because they thought the players in the first Forza were able to take advantage of the damage model up to its limits. Fair enough, it looks more detailed and obvious, and how it affects gameplay depends on your preference, meaning one mistake can potentially end your race, but at least there's no rubber banding so it isn't unfair. And seeing that Aston Martin DB9 all scratched up like that, your heart shrinks a little bit. Admittedly, I did a lot of paint trading to gain an advantage in the first Forza, and I still occasionally do that here. But that's because some events have that one car that gives you serious trouble. Look, the other opponents pose no threat, but this looks so wrong. And as you can see, I get a bit salty about it occasionally. The automatic settings, I'm happy with. Like most good sim racers, I'm having the time of my life. But once you turn everything off, it becomes a completely different video game. One of the hardest, which is technically the way you should be racing. But unless you play this game your whole life, it doesn't work well with the controller. This is the case with most sim races, but I'm pointing it out in this review because that's when it occurred to me. If I had the official Xbox 360 wireless racing wheel, I'd give the harder mechanics a proper go, because I can imagine it working better with more authentic controls. Fun fact, the Xbox 360 wheel was designed around the development of Forza Motorsport 2, and to work as best as possible. Turn 10 did multiple tests on the Sebring circuit to get the physics for this game correct, using race drivers and Microsoft's best programmers. Personally, I don't really think about the physics, but after I did my research for this review and understood the lengths the developers went to get it right, when I went back to playing it again, it started to make more sense. The tire quote made it sound like he was insane, but that's the kind of attention to detail you need to put in to creating a sim racer these days, and they wouldn't know what they did wrong if they didn't do it right, according to Dan. But keep in mind that another one of the developers' intentions were to make collecting and driving many different cars exciting, with a leveling system a typical RPG would have, which means there are a lot of different reasons to like Forza Motorsport 2. It could be the online activities, realistic mechanics, the collecting, customization options, or all of the above. The latter is probably my favorite part, because you can do it with more cars than the Need for Speed titles. Point is, there'll be at least one thing about Forza Motorsport 2 you'll really like if you're a racing fan. There are a few more additions from the predecessor than I thought, and everything else is better apart from the circuit count. The only real criticism I have, which also applies to most sim races, is that it gets boring after 30 minutes, an hour. It's partly why I drive aggressively, it keeps me entertained. But otherwise, what you have is the first game, but more of it with HD graphics and a smoother frame rate. It does everything a racing sequel should do, and proved it was here to stay on the Xbox. So if you don't have the first game, I say just get this one for the 360. Or should you get the follow-ups? I'll find out soon.